Hare Krishna. Nice to see everybody. Bharani, is he being nice to you?
Yes, Guru.
I can't hear you. Oh, just a second. Okay, can you hear me better now?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Is he being nice?
Yes, Guru.
Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and start. I have to try to be a little quick today. We got a lot of things going on. Gora, let's see here. Gora Graganya Gana Gotra Goloruharam Goranga Gudachama Gopyara Kolpa Briksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshi Kavaram Satatam Namami Utama Adama Kichuna Bachila Janchi Hadile Kakola Kahe Premananda Hemona Goranga Hridaya Dariya Bola Vaja Goranga Kaha Goranga Laha Gorangera Namare Jai Jana Goranga Bhaje Se Hoyamara Pranare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Yashaiva Padambuja Bhakti Labhya Prema Bhidana Parama Pumata Tasmai Jagan Mangala Mangalaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Madgavirapi Gopala Svikriyat Kripaya Jari Tadaiva Samvaya Pitva Rishayustat Priya Janaha Shri Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Sasanatana Rupaka Gopala Raghunatapta Brajavala Bapahimam Pancha Kalpatarubhischa Kripa Sindhu Bhyaeva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Brinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everybody. Nice to see everyone here today. So we're just going to read and discuss a little something. Again, from this Anarpita Cirat verse, which we'll go ahead and start with together. I'll paste this in our little chat. Everybody can cite this together. Anarpita Cirat Karuna Avatirna Kalo Samarpahitam Manujvala Rasam Svabhakti Shriyam Hari Parata Sundara Duti Kadamba Sandipitaha Sada Hridaya Kandare Sparatuva Sachinandanaha. Jaguar, would you like to read?
Sure would. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay. May the Supreme Lord, who is known as the son of Srimati Shachi Devi, be transcendently situated in the innermost chambers of your heart. Resplendent with the radiance of molten gold, he has appeared in the age of Kali by his causeless mercy to bestow what no incarnation has ever offered before, the most sublime and radiant mellow of devotional service, the mellow of conjugal love.
So we've been speaking about the meaning something of Unnata Ujjvala, and how he was giving the most elevated conjugal mellow, most elevated thing. We hear from the verse that this is something which is Hridaya Kandare. And by Hridaya Kanda, as we mentioned, means a cave. It also means something in the heart. Hridaya means the heart. Kandare means inside of this hidden place, inside the heart, inside the cave. So it indicates that this is something which is confidential. Just like, I don't know if any of you saw our discussion today. I guess nobody was online for it and it hasn't been released yet, about Gopi Geet. I think this was the best session we've had yet. You really got to see it. It's very, very amazing. And one of the subjects which came up there, Jiva Goswami in Laghu Vaishnav Toshini, he says that the gopis are speaking in two ways, both collectively and individually, because they were speaking about, they're glorifying Krishna, who had saved them from Kaliya, who had saved them from Agasura and Vyomasura and Aristasura and different demons. And several of the demons, it's interesting, the gopis weren't present when Krishna killed Agasura or Vyomasura. So what does it mean when they're speaking like this? They're considering themselves part of the larger group of the Brijbasis that you saved all of us, but at the same time, they're also speaking in an individual way, and that's a little more intricate how they meant those particular, referring to those particular demons, that Krishna saved them in an individual way. But both things are being spoken of. Generally, in spiritual life, people, they're thinking of their own benefit. And in our last session, we spoke something about how this Unnata Ujjvala Rasa meant something which hadn't been given before, because generally people want liberation, or maybe they want love of God. That's a very, very high thing. In our last session, we spoke something about three types of Sattvika Bhaktas, the Adama, Madhyama, Uttam, from the Brihanardiya Purana, and how an Adama Sattvika Bhakta is someone who worships the Lord to become free from their sins. And they have faith in the Lord. But that faith, that bhakti, is Adama Sattvika Bhakti. It's the lowest. And Madhyama Sattvika Bhakta is someone who they're doing it because they know Haridam Priyamiti, that this is dear to Krishna. But still, as we commented last time, they're doing it because they know it pleases Krishna, but ultimately they're trying to please Krishna for themselves. It has that flaw, it's not selfless. And then there's the Uttama Sattvika Bhakta. They also know that this is something for Krishna's pleasure, but they're following Shastra. They're doing it because Shastra says so. And that's the best. But still, they're not doing it. These are all personalities who are Saguna Bhaktas, devotees in the modes of material nature, because they're not doing it solely for the pleasure of Krishna. So Anarpita Chiram Cirat Karuna Avatirna Kalo, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came and he gave something which hadn't been given in a long, long time. Something which is very, very rare. Something which is much more than liberation. Something which was even more than Krishna Prem. That's a very, very amazing thing. In the 11th chapter of the Madhya Lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a beautiful description. It's called the Beta Kirtan pastimes. It's a description given of Maharaj Prataparudra watching the associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu coming to Jagannath Puri and asking Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya who's who in that. And Maharaj Prataparudra is astonished. And he makes some interesting comments which are relevant for our discussion today. Raja kohe deki mor hoila chamatkar. Vaishnavera eche teja deki nahiyar. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Huh? Rajakahi says, Deki Mora, when I see all these devotees, Hoila Chamatkar, I'm really astonished. Vaishnavera Aichi Teja Deki Naya, I've never seen devotees with such effulgence. And we read this when they go, yes, this is far out. The associates of Mahaprabhu were such devotees. But we don't stop to think a little bit about the background of Maharaj Prataparudra. In his family were the deities of Sri Sri Radha Rasik Raj. If you haven't had darshan of those deities here in Jagannath Puri, we can take you there, along with the Sri Sri Gaurni Thai deities, which were established by Maharaj Prataparudra. But in his family, Sri Sri Radha Rasik Raj had been for many generations. They knew about Radha Krishna. And they were chanting Hare Krishna. He's used to sing kirtan, as he describes in the next verse. Aiche prema, aiche nitya, aiche hari dvani. Kahan nahi deki, aiche kahan nahi shuni. He says, I've never seen aiche prema. I've never seen love like this before. Aichi Nitya, I've never seen dancing like this. Aichi Haridvane, I've never seen anyone chanting, doing kirtan like this before. Kahan Nahi Deki, I've never seen such a thing. Kahan Nahi Suni, I've never heard of such a thing. And this is a very interesting point, because prior to the time of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and we can prove this historically through literature, through iconography, through different things, the worship of Radha Krishna was going on in Jagannath Puri. And the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra was going on in Jagannath Puri. And Maharaj Prataparudra was a great devotee, and he was used to all of that. He was used to seeing, from this we can understand, he was used to even seeing persons who had love of God. He says, Aichi Prema, I've never seen love like this before. Aichi Nitya, I've never seen dancing like this before. Aichi Haridvani, I've seen so many kirtans, but I've never seen any kirtan like this. And Sarvabhauma replied, Bhattacharya kahe madhura vachana, Chaitanya Rashishti prema sankirtana. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya replied that madhur vachan, this sweet sound, this is Chaitanya Srishti. This is something, Srishti means to create. This is something Chaitanya Mahaprabhu created, a Prema Sankirtan. It's known as Premanam Sankirtan. This is something which hadn't been given in a long, long time before. And this is a very, very important thing for us to understand, because even within our movement, as we were mentioning in our last session, there's so many devotees who think that getting liberation is really the most important thing, or at least if it's not the most important thing, at least it's a very important thing. But the devotees of the Lord, they consider that to be insignificant. As we mentioned previously, Mukti tucha phalo hai nama basa hoiti. That mukti is tucha phalo. It's an insignificant byproduct of even nama bas. Liberation is just an insignificant thing. Nadanam najanam nasundarim kavitam va jagadisha kami. The newest devotee should understand this principle. But still, we have a hard time wrapping our head around it. Because our bhakti, we're lucky, we're very fortunate if we can meet a devotee whose bhakti is in the mode of goodness. That's a very, very rare thing. Usually there's lower motivations. Our bhakti is not so elevated, and we can't understand the principle of doing something for the pleasure of the Lord. And this is the essential point which Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is coming to give, because he's Krishna coming in the mood of Radha. And what is the mood of Radha? It's to please Krishna. He has to experience Radha's mood pleasing himself. It's really inconceivable. And that's just never been done before, because everyone else has some kind of motivation, subtle or gross. Their bhakti is mixed with some particular mode of nature. And even if they're chanting Hare Krishna, even if they're worshiping Radha Krishna, reading Srimad Bhagavatam, still, it's not the same unless they're following Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his mood. So we know from Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he speaks about different types of bliss. There's Vishayananda. Vishayananda is the happiness in sense gratification. And if you live in America, you know something about Vishayananda. That's what America is very, very good for. Europe, you're okay. But America, really, that's the tirtha for Vishayananda, to enjoy thoroughly. And all the politicians, they're just trying to get votes by telling people, we're going to give you more Vishaya, we're going to give you more sense gratification. That Vishayananda means the happiness through the material body. And people are thinking that this is happiness, but it's not happiness. That's like the happiness of a pig. But still, we're so attached to our bodies. So attached to our bodies, it's very, very hard to give that up. So higher than Vishayananda is Brahmananda. Brahmananda is the happiness that someone gets from Brahman. Or to speak in a simpler way, this may be more easily relatable to us, because we don't know very many devotees who, I just really want to get some Brahmananda Prabhu. We have Brahmananda Prabhu, the devotee, but mostly devotees are not thinking that they want to get happiness from Brahman. But what does it mean, happiness from Brahman? Happiness from Brahman, in one sense, just means detachment from sense gratification and attachment to something spiritual. And if we think like that, if we have that kind of definition, then all of a sudden we see, there's a lot of devotees who are like that. I've seen so many of the younger devotees. We were maybe mentioning this before. We organize sometimes some programs with some of the younger new people in Orissa, with some senior devotees. And we've had Radhanath Maharaj and Chandramauli Maharaj and so many different devotees speak, Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj and others. And they always have the same questions at the end. How do I give up sex desire? How can I get beyond looking at pretty girls? How can I this? Because their absorption is in Vishai. And they're thinking that if I can overcome that, then that's really spiritual life. But it's just the flip side of the coin. They're still absorbed in the same bodily conception. And that doesn't mean to say that if we have some understanding about this, that we're so much higher than them. But at least devotees should have a philosophical understanding that this Brahmananda, and again, let's not even call it Brahmananda, but let's just call it the happiness of spiritual life, or the happiness of detachment. That this happiness of detachment is not the highest thing. And so many devotees, they're thinking like that. I have to be a brahmachari. There's so much suffering in household life and like that. Yehi samsparshaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evdi ajanta vanta kunta yanateshu ramate buddha. In the 5th chapter of the Gita, Krishna says that adyanta vanta kunta, from the beginning, the middle, and the end, this vishaya shuk, this material pleasure, it causes all kinds of suffering. And for those persons who are intelligent, they give it up. Gauranga. So some devotees, they have some understanding about that. But if you contemplate it, that understanding is also selfish. It's also based about me. So higher than Vishayananda is Brahmananda, much higher. Much higher than Brahmananda, though, is Premananda. Srila Prabhupada speaks about that in one lecture he gave on Nectar Devotion in December 1972. He says, Bhakta does not accept Brahmananda. Brahmananda means liberation from material ananda. But unless, he says, one is engaged in Sevananda, service of the Lord, this Brahmananda will not be sufficient to keep him in the spiritual world. So Srila Prabhupada here is speaking something very important, that even our goal is not Premananda. Premananda is a very, very high thing. And we hear in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu several different examples. We touched on this morning on Gita Govinda discussions. Sounds like someone's trying to call me. Give me 1 second here. Maybe I should just turn my phone off. that this Premananda is described in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and just trying to see how to turn off my phone. Gauranga. So several examples are given that Daruka, once he's fanning Krishna, and he started becoming really ecstatic, and his body started shaking in ecstatic love, and it got in the way of his service. And Daruka started praying, may this go away. Similarly, Srimati Radharani, on one occasion, she was looking at Krishna, and she started crying in ecstasy. And those tears hindered her vision of Krishna. And so she was condemning that, praying that this would go away. We may, as we were discussing a little this morning, we may have a hard time understanding it because we're so much in a selfish condition. We tend to think that even darshan means for my pleasure. And devotees, they put pictures of the deity up on their wall, and I really like this red outfit. This is really, really cool. And we think of darshan for my pleasure, and it is a kind of pleasure. It's pleasure of bhakti in the mode of goodness. Doesn't necessarily mean that our level of bhakti is completely sattvic, but at least partially it may be, because the modes of material nature and also different levels of bhakti, saguna bhakti, may be mixed. And certainly looking at a picture of the Lord, that's a nice thing to get some pleasure from. But it's still selfish. So we may have a hard time understanding how Srimati Radharani, she wants to see Krishna so bad. We may think, oh, that's kind of mundane, but it's not. And as we were discussing this morning, just as when a young girl looks at a young boy and she's looking at him and she's completely in love, that boy gets so much pleasure from the glance of that girl. And vice versa. When a boy is looking at a girl in a lusty way or in a mood of some kind of mundane love, the girl gets some pleasure from that. So that way, Krishna gets pleasure from the glance of Srimati Radharani. And this discussion about darshan is actually a very, very deep thing. So if we consider that there's Vishayananda, the happiness of the body, higher than that is Brahmananda, or the happiness of giving up material attachment, but higher than that is Premananda, the happiness of Krishna Prem. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give something, Anarpita carim cirat, which is far, far even beyond that Premananda. And that was Sevananda. And therefore, our acharyas, Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, they quote a verse by Hanuman, Bhavabhanda chide tashay, spriyayami namuktaye, bhavan prabhuraham dasa itiyata vilupyate. He says that namuktaye, I don't want this liberation. If this liberation means then I'm going to lose the conception of service to the Lord. If I lose my conception of being a servant, because my feeling of Sevananda is so much, much, much greater. And this is the feelings of Hanuman. And Hanuman is a great devotee, but we can't hardly compare Hanuman, his mood, to the mood of the gopis. Nayananda Thakur was one of the associates of Lord Nityananda Prabhu, and he wrote a wonderful book called Krishna Bhakti Rasa Kadamba. And in there, he also speaks about the importance of seva. In chapter 3, he writes, Hena mukti sukha vancha nakori bhakta gan, sevya sevaka bhavaya jate nahi rana. Hena mukti sukha, that the happiness of that liberation, vancha nakori bhakta gan. The devotees, they don't desire that. With seva sevaka bhava jahi nahiran, if there's no conception of the served, of Krishna who's meant to be served, and the condition of a servant, because there's so much happiness in being a servant. Mukti hoile seva shuka napaya tahate, seva shuka bhakti phala satata bhakate. He goes on to say, Nayananda Thakur says that On the platform of liberation, Mukti Hoila, Seva Sukha na paitahite. There's no Seva Sukh. Just on the platform of liberation, there's no happiness of service. But the devotees, Bhakta Phala, they get this fruit. Satata Bhakate, they always get the fruit of bhakti, which is Seva Sukh, the happiness of doing service. Bhakti Mukhi E Beda Purani Lakshana. Bhakta Gana Sevananda Koraye Prarthana. So there's different symptoms, different lakshana. Lakshana means symptoms of bhakti and of liberation. Bhakti Mukti E Beda Purani Lakshana. There's different symptoms of that. But the devotee, Bhakta Gana, all the devotees, they pray for Sevananda Koraye Prarthana. The followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nayananda Thakur, said, this is what they want. This Sevananda is the topmost thing. This is also mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita, in Madhya Lila chapter 20. Krishna Madhurja Sevananda Praptara Karan Sevas Krishna Seva Kore A Krishna Rasasvadan. So when someone attains the Sevananda, Krishna Madhurja Sevananda Prapta Karan. But not just Sevananda, but Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Sevananda that he's giving is Krishna Madhurja Sevananda. It's very sweet bliss. Krishna Madhurja Sevananda. Then, and that devotee, he attains that, then he begins to serve Krishna, and our Krishna Rasa Asvada, he can really taste Krishna Bhakti Rasa at that time. So this is what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give. Anarpita chirim cirat karuna avatirna kalo samarpaita manujala rasa swabhakti sriyam. That unata ujjala rasa. He came to give this particular rasa. And you can't taste that rasa unless we have some desire for service. So sometimes we see devotees, they have some desire to accumulate knowledge. And that's a very nice thing. That, as we mentioned before, is bhakti in the mode of goodness. To study Shastra, to have some faith in Shastra, but it's still saguna bhakti. We really cross the line when we begin to do service for Gurudev, for the pleasure of Guru. So, again in Adi Lila chapter 4, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Kaviraj Goswami says, Arasuda Bhakta Krishna Prema Seva Bine Swasukarta Salokyari Nakore Grahane. That those devotees who are pure devotees, the Sudha Bhaktas, Krishna Prema Seva Vini, all that they want is to serve Krishna. Krishna Seva Vini, they'll never give that up. Swasukarta Salokyari Nakori Grahani. Even if Grahani, they can get the Salokyari, these different types of liberation headed by being on the same planet with Krishna. We're not talking about Kaivalya Mukti or merging with Krishna. Everybody knows that's very bad. But we're also speaking about being on the same planet with Krishna, which means being an associate of Krishna. But the devotees, even they don't want that. They're not playing for that happiness. They just want to serve Krishna, to give Krishna pleasure. Narada Pancharatra describes Dharmartha Kama Moksheshu Necha Mama Kadachana Twatpada Pankajasyado Jivitam Diyatam Mama. Lord Shiva tells Parvati that Dharmartha Kama Moksheshu, that when you speak about Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha, the four different types of what are known as four different types of desirable goals. He says, Necha Mama Kadachana. I don't want any of those things. All that I want. Twatpada Pankajasyado Jivitam Diyatam Mama. My Jivitam, my life. I just want to be a servant of the Lord. That's my everything. There's more pleasure in being a servant of the Lord. And therefore Nityananda Prabhu, he comes and it's Nityananda Avaduti Sabate Agala Chaitanya Dasa Prema Haile Pagala. He becomes puggle. He becomes mad and he just thinks, Chaitanya Das, Chaitanya Das, Chaitanya Das. I am a servant of the Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I'm a servant of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I'm a servant of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's all that he's thinking. And the nature of the prema, this Unnata Ujjvala Rasa Swabhakti Shriyam, that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving is that it's not just love, but it's love imbued with service. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada did a very interesting thing. One of the most basic things in our movement, which I would suggest probably 99% of the devotees never really even think very deeply about, the way that Srila Prabhupada translated the word bhakti. Prabhupada translated bhakti as devotional service. Strictly speaking, bhakti is emotion, or bhakti is a process, Navavidhi bhakti, whereby one worships the Lord. But bhakti, Prabhupada says, means devotional service. And this is the nature of the movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is what he's coming to give, because this is the mood of Srimati Radharani. Srimati Radharani, she wants to be the maidservant of Krishna. And Kaviraj Goswami describes, Krishna Premier Eka Purva Prabhav Guru Sama Lagu Ke Koroye Dashabhav. The Krishna Prema, Eka Purva Prabhav. It has this one astonishing, unique prabhav, this unique quality, this unique effect, that Guru Sama Lagu Ke Koroye Dashabhav. That whether someone's a superior guru, someone's a sama, they're an equal person, they're a lagu, they're an inferior person. It gives everybody this dasya bhav. It inspires everyone with the spirit of service to Krishna. Again, there's a misconception sometimes devotees have where they think that oh, this means something like amongst the different rasas, there's dasya ras, servitorship. And this is what we should start with. That's not what Rupa Goswami is describing when he says Anarpita chirim chirat karuna avatirna kalo. Then this rasa that he's giving, this is the servitorship, the mood of servitorship of Radharani and of the gopis. And this comes Nikunja Yuno Rati Keli Sidya Ya Yali Bir Yuktir Apekshani Tati Dakshat Ati Balabasha Vande Guru Shri Charanarabindam. This is given through disciplic succession of our Guru Janas who consider themselves to be service, and their particular service is to bring Radha and Krishna together. So this is the mood of the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is our line. I know we haven't gotten into so many things today, but with the blessings of the devotees, I'd like to stop here. I have a lot of rounds left to chant, and because our Gopi Geet session this morning, the whole thing lasted about 3 hours. There's only 2 hours on the recording. There's another hour we just had a discussion between the three of us before it started. Very sweet discussion, which wasn't recorded. And this has been a really intense day for me. Plus, we're leaving in a couple of days for Mayapur. So if anybody has any reflections, only a few devotees here today. Reed, do you want to share any reflections you have today? Simple, complicated? Love seeing that this is the Gobar wall again behind you there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of sand and clay and gobar, but yeah. Anyways, at the end you mentioned, Prabhupada translated the word bhakti to devotional service. And I was just recently, I'm in this study group with Jai Jagannath Prabhu, and he was kind of going through the Madhurya Kadambini with a few devotees and myself, and he gave us a little questionnaire, and I was answering that. And obviously there's several different definitions of bhakti, whether it's bhav bhakti or, and such. So Prabhupada, he defined bhakti as devotional service, but I remember Jai, he was saying, to limit, the translation of bhakti to like one or two English words is a little, limiting for that word. It's actually, you know, it can take, even in like an essay just to understand the meaning of bhakti, when it's translated to the English language. So I was wondering if you have anything to
Any
say on
thoughts about
that.
that? Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree. These words like bhav, like bhakti, like prema, they're used in many different ways, and sometimes devotees become confused how they're used and what they mean. We were today focusing on just one particular meaning of bhakti as being service and being the reflection of the desire of Shrimati Radharani. And that was our purpose today. It doesn't mean these other points are not valid or not valid ways to see bhakti. They are, and we should understand that. And devotees oftentimes become confused about that. But it's like a personal thing. If someone comes and says, "Well, my God, that Lila Purushottam, the guy is such a good businessman." And I did business with him. He's just really expert with money and this and that and the other. Someone else says, "Lila Purushottam? Businessman? What are you talking about? The guy grows vegetables and he likes doing kirtan, he likes deity worship or something." And someone sees him from a completely different perspective. And maybe Lila Purushottam himself may say, "No, I'm not such a businessman." But someone may see him in that particular way. So even as individuals, many different people will see us in different ways according to their particular vision. So also when we speak about bhakti, when we speak about any of these definitions, we want to understand what is the version of our acharyas. And our acharyas, it becomes confusing because they speak in different ways at different times to different people when they're explaining different things. And some people will latch onto one particular explanation and they'll insist that this particular explanation, this is the topmost, this is the only explanation, whereas many of them can be true. Just like speaking about Lila Purushottam, but maybe he is a good businessman, at least to the eyes of some people. But somebody else sees him as a gardener, someone else sees him as a nice family man, someone else sees him as a pujari. So the same person, but different people will see him in so many different ways. Is that okay, Reed? Okay. I want to try to
Yeah,
go
that
a
helps.
little quick today. Go ahead. There's something more?
No, I think that helps. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Pooja. Lila Purushottam, do you want to share something?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Yeah, well, I guess we missed quite something because your connection was a little bit unstable. So
Oh,
many times happened like, oh, no, now I want to see what Prabhu says, and it went.
Krishna. I didn't even know. I didn't even know it was going down.
But anyway, I like that explanation because I remember that it was a I don't know how to say, strong understanding for me from Chaitanya Charitamrita when there is discussion on that the servitudeship is the underlying principle in all the rasas, because sometimes devotees calculate like, okay, first I have to fully develop dasya rasa
and then I'll progress to the next rasa, whatever.
So that was one thing. And then I would like to ask you one thing that I've heard many years ago, and somehow it just sticked with me. But somehow when I went through the Chaitanya Charitamrita, I didn't find it there actually. I was surprised. But there is this, because you mentioned that situation with Prataparudra Maharaj, and then around those chapters when there is Ratha Yatra described and these pastimes, you mentioned specifically that Veda Kirtan chapter, but in those chapters that Ratha Yatra is described, there is this scene where Prataparudra Maharaj and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, they can, like, they are standing up. I guess it's somewhere like up on the Grand Road, close to the mandir, and they're seeing, they're watching down how the Ratha Yatra goes on and how the kirtan goes on, and they can see how Lord Chaitanya is simultaneously present in all the groups. And then it is described by Kaviraj Goswami as something like they have a very special mercy that they can witness it, and it's like something like making them special. But on the other hand, that's what I've heard, and what created a little different impression for me actually, that actually it can be seen as a symptom of that their bhakti was rather mixed with Aishwarya, because the Lord was willing to let them see his opulence compared or contrary to the devotees who were in the kirtan. So they did just, they were with the Lord in the kirtan. They didn't care like if he's in all the 7 groups all together, or they were just in with him in the kirtan, which would be in that discussion considered like a higher conception in that sense, that their understanding of the Aishwarya, of the opulence of the Lord, was symptom of it's not to judge the devotees, I guess, just that if you could have any thoughts on it, comments.
Yeah. When we hear something similar, which is a Ras Leela, and Krishna, sometimes it's said that he expanded himself and was dancing next to every gopi. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Sartha Darshan, said no, he didn't expand himself. Rather, he was just moving so fast that it seemed like he was with each particular gopi. And we don't hear that those gopis were seeing that Krishna was everywhere with all the other gopis at the same time. They thought Krishna was with them. Some of the cowherd boys, when they're having lunch with Krishna, they're thinking that Krishna's right. Krishna's looking at me. Krishna's discussing with me, and he's not focusing on anyone else. They're saying like that, but they're not aware that Krishna's looking at so many other persons. So then how is it that we understand Maharaj Prataparudra's position? I've not heard any commentaries from our acharyas about that, but we understand a few things, obviously. First of all, Maharaj Prataparudra is the king. According to Kavi Karnapur and Gaur Ganadash Dipika, he's Indradyumna Maharaj, an incarnation. And the position of a king, as described by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is that he's a bit of a Vishai. Of course, not Maharaj Prataparudra. He's a millions of times greater Vaishnava than ourselves, but still Mahaprabhu is describing him as a Vishai, meaning I would take it that he has some attachment to opulence, because it's the nature of certain bhaktas. Those bhaktas in Vaikuntha, they have some attachment to the opulence of the Lord. And Maharaj Prataparudra wouldn't be surprising at all, because he's in Jagannath Puri, and Lord Jagannath, who's the Ishtadev here, is Aishvarja, Madhurja, Yugal, and Milan. He's a combined form of both opulence and sweetness. So certainly, as a position of a king, kings like to see, the Lord kicking butt, the Lord killing the demons. They like to see some opulent feature of the Lord. They appreciate. So Maharaj Prataparudra was able to see that, and we don't hear that Srup Damodar Goswami was saying that, or Roy Ramananda was saying that, those devotees. And we understand their vision. They were just completely absorbed in seeing Mahaprabhu's ecstasy, not seeing all these different expansions. That's the way I would read it and support, in that sense, what you're saying.
Oh,
but I would see it that there's both two things that are manifest there. There's both sweetness and opulence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hey, Mani Gopal Prabhu, are you there? Are you alive? You want to share any thoughts with us? Nice to
Hare
see you.
Krishna Prabhuji. Prabhu, actually, I just came from, so I could not hear much of the part. I saw the message late.
Okay. Nice to see you. Your health is okay?
Yes, Prabhuji. By your mercy.
I have some bad news for the residents of Mayapur and some good news for me. The good news for me is we're coming to Mayapur on the 7th.
I know that.
And that's bad news for everybody in Mayapur, but
No,
just please forgive us. The good news is
I don't know about others, but it's wonderful information for me, Prabhu.
well, I'm only going to be there for a few days. We're going to leave. It looks like on the 12th, I'm going to leave and come back. My godbrother Halidar Maharaj is going to he's going to initiate some devotees and he wants me to do the yagya. So I'll come back for a few days and then I'll return to Mayapur. It looks like maybe I'll be there on the 15th or
You
something like that.
will try to meet you, Prabhu, in person.
Yeah, I hope so. Your health is okay now?
Yes, Prabhu, I'm fine. Prabhu, actually, I also will talk to you in person, maybe, regarding you have asked me some translations. So I'll also ask.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Muji. We can discuss it later. Okay, and I want to be fairly quick with things. Jai Gaur, do you have anything you want to add? Is Bana there? Maybe she has something.
She's in the next room.
It's okay.
I was particularly thinking about how if I'm correct, you mentioned that those living entities who are on the platform of Brahmananda, they also have selfish desires, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so I was kind of thinking about, I don't know, just kind of going down this rabbit hole. Like I've heard before that the only reason that other spiritual practices work is because there's a tinge of bhakti in them. Do you know what I'm getting at? So I was just thinking about, I don't know if it's difficult for me to form a question, but yeah, maybe you have something to say about that.
One thing that I think a lot is that Srila Prabhupada was so expert that he encouraged so many different types of devotees. And even Prabhupada's basically, he told people, you want Vishayananda, okay, you can also get that here. And Prabhupada would say sometimes, we have so many beautiful girls. In some lectures, sometimes he would say, we have so many beautiful girls, you pick one. You get married. I don't know what the girls thought about that. But Prabhupada said like this sometimes. And Prabhupada used to, excuse me, Prabhupada used to keep a jar of glubjamins next to the door. They called ISKCON bullets. That's Vishayananda. Prabhupada saw the devotees who were very, very attached, but that's okay. Prabhupada didn't criticize it. This is okay, you want this, but Prabhupada was always encouraging to give that up. Even Prabhupada was very strong about devotees trying to give up their sleep, minimize their sleep, which is something which I think is very, very difficult for most devotees. At least I know for myself physically. It's not something very easy. Prabhupada gave Vishayananda, and he also encouraged Brahmananda. To me, Brahmananda at least means being a brahmachari. Being a brahmachari means that they're situated, they're acharya in Brahman, or being a sannyasi, that's Brahmananda. From a mundane point of view, they're giving up everything, and there's some happiness in that. Wow, things are really, really good. But Prabhupada, from the very beginning, he encouraged devotees, even that famous story is there of the drunken bum on 26th Avenue who came in with a roll of toilet paper and gave that, and Prabhupada encouraged that service. From the very beginning, Srila Prabhupada stressed service. And we should understand the depth of that and not just think that all he's doing that to bless them. Sometimes devotees, they say, well, I'm speeding and the policeman pulls me over to give me a ticket. And if I can talk him out of giving me a ticket, then he'll get a blessing because he can do some service for the Vaishnavas. And we think that service is meant for our pleasure, or that service is something maybe a little higher, that which is beneficial for this other person. But we don't understand the sanctity and importance of service and what service really means. That service really means something for the pleasure of that other person. And Prabhupada, even though so many of us are so very, very dull and so very, very far away from bhakti, Srila Prabhupada was encouraging that for the newest devotees to understand. And one thing I find in going to the holy dhams in Vrindavan and Mayapur and Jagannath Puri, speaking to different sadhus at different times who are in Gaudiya Math or Babaji lines. Many of them really respect ISKCON. And one of the things that they respect about ISKCON, they say, you people, you really, you're Guru Nishta, and you have a sense of service for your Gurudev. Now, sometimes we may think, oh, they're just trying to encourage me by that. But they're speaking like that at a genuine appreciation. Those Rasik Bhaktas, I feel that they're Rasik Bhaktas, because they understand the absolute importance of that Sevananda. Is that okay, Jaguar?
Yeah, Prabhu, thank you.
Helpful something? Okay. Well, I beg apology if I can jump off here now. Then I'll go back to my job, and we have Damodar Ashtakam coming up pretty soon, and then we're tomorrow. If anybody's online and they want to take part, I'll send a link as soon as I get it. We're doing another Jagannath Puri online parikrama. And I'm not sure what we'll be talking about tomorrow. I think maybe Tota Gopinath. Actually, I was thinking to talk about Tota Gopinath and Chatak Parvat Govardhan tomorrow. So if anybody wants to take part, that will be at 4:30 p.m. Indian time, which, to give you an idea, right now is 7 o'clock Indian time, so it'd be 2.5 hours earlier than whatever it is right now, wherever you are. Be starting. So I think right now your time, Jaguar, is what, about 8:30 in the morning or something?
It's 9:30 now, but it'll
9:30.
in 5 days it'll be 8:30 because it'll be daylight savings time.
Yeah, strange thing, daylight savings time.
Yeah.
Anyway, it'll be 2.5 hours earlier than it is now. So meditate like that. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. My humble pranams, and I'm not sure when we go to Mayapur. It looks like just looking at my schedule, the 10th we should be able to have a normal program, and maybe the 17th also, and the 25th. From the looks of things, it doesn't look like we have to change anything, but we might have to. I'm not gonna promise anything at this point. We're just gonna see how it goes, but it looks like everything's gonna be okay. We may cancel something if we have some kirtan with Naranjan Maharaj or something. Please forgive us. Okay. Anchakalpatarubhishcha kripasindhubheva-cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Nandakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Kok Premanandi Hari Hari.